Before we kind of get into the meat of the class today, there's a few items I wanted to go over, how, the housekeeping announcement type of things. And of course, if anybody has any questions up front, please feel free to ask. You can always unmute yourself to ask questions and participate. I just muted everybody so that at the beginning, we were all kind of on the same page. Okay, so in terms of reminders, we have, I want to make sure that y'all know that you can schedule separate from office hours. You get 1 hour one-on-one with me as part of this, as part of the course. So if you haven't scheduled a one-on-one with me yet, please do that. You can also wait until next semester if you want. I guess next year, next spring, for course 2, if you prefer, but you can also go ahead and schedule a one-on-one with me now or anytime in the fall. And the information on how to do that is in the syllabus, or you can also email me to schedule a time as well. I will be continuing with office hours through mid-September. So last office hour I'll have will be September 13th. That's also when you should have your campaign plan finalized. This is the last class for this course, and the next course will begin in February, and there'll be new topics that we'll be exploring, still related to digital fundraising in that second class. Today is the deadline for submitting your strategic fundraising plans. If you're not able to submit them today, please submit them as soon as possible. Plans that are submitted after today, I can't promise that I will be able to review and provide feedback on those. See what else. We're going to be starting on your campaign plan today, which you'll have a month to work on before it'll be due in mid-September. And I will go ahead and review that, more details related to that. But before I do that, I wanted to make sure, Jordan, are there any announcements that you want to get through to folks? I know that there's the copywriting class coming up and some other things.
Yes. So y'all should have gotten an email yesterday, which outlined exactly what Elsa just said. So take advantage of those office hours. Remember that for any heavy lifting for this course or for anything for your nonprofit, you can leverage Catchafire for this full year for free. I also put in the chat just a quick mention. Our marketing team is looking for exciting ways that we can feature different nonprofits this year for our statewide campaign related to Colorado Gives Day. So if you had success last year or are mixing it up this year and using the platform in a new and exciting way, we just ask you to email us at hello@coloradogivesfoundation.org, and we will work with you to see how we can feature your nonprofit. And lastly, as Elsa had mentioned, we are starting the copywriting course in September 5th specifically. And so on September 5th, there is going to be a welcome Zoom, basically just a place where you guys should be joining. It'll be about half an hour, 45 minutes tops, really just to allow you to see what the course is going to be about for the copywriting certificate before you start moving through that content on your own over the next 4 weeks of September. More information on that will come out soon. And that is all my announcements. Thank you for letting me talk for a little bit, and take it away, Elsa.
All right. Well, I would take it away if Zoom's controls would get out of my way. Okay, here we go. So I want to go ahead and go through the homework assignment for the campaign plan. Now, this is a campaign plan for Colorado Gives Day, or some of you may want to build out a campaign plan that is inclusive of your entire end of year giving strategy. So you may want to build a holistic campaign plan. That's totally fine. You can do that as well. But just make sure that you're building in Colorado Gives Day, obviously, into whatever campaign plan you're developing for end of year. Okay, so you'll start the outline today in class. You will still continue to do, peer review and have support from your peer pairs. If you're having any issues connecting with the person that you are supposed to be able to work with, please reach out to Jordan about that, and we'll see what we can get figured out. The final plan should be submitted on September 13th. The way that you'll submit the plan will be to upload it to Google Drive. I'm going to actually go into Google Drive and show you where that is in a moment, since you'll need to know that information today as well to submit your strategic plans for fundraising. Please submit those as either a doc or a Google Doc file, not as a PDF, because I want to be able to provide comments to y'all, and I can't really do that very easily with a PDF. Please name your file with your full name and the name of the assignment, so it's easy for me to know whose plan I'm looking at. It's really important. And the link to the assignments folder is right here in the homework assignment, which is also in Google Drive. There are also support resource materials related to this assignment that I'll also be walking through in a moment, and all of that is also in Google Drive. Does anyone have questions about this assignment before I get into where things are in Google Drive? Okay, not hearing any questions. I will go ahead and go through where things are. All right, so this is the folder that you should all have access to. It's the Level Up Course 1 folder. This is where all the class recordings are. I'll be uploading today's class later on in the day. This is where all your homework assignments are located. You'll see the description, the full description of the assignment here. This is the folder where you'll upload your assignments. You should be able to upload them here without issue, but if you do run into a problem, feel free to just email me your assignment instead. That's also fine. This is where all the support materials are. They're organized by lesson. For lesson 3, you have a variety of support materials. I provided you with a campaign plan outline template. And just like with the outline template for your strategic plan, this is meant to be a guide and an assist to you. It is not the Bible. Please feel free to adapt it as necessary, or if you have a different way that you typically formulate your plans, you're welcome to set them up in the way that is most comfortable and useful to you. At the end of the day, this stuff is supposed to actually be useful in your day-to-day work life. So please make adaptations that make this work well for you. There is an email best practices guide. This is a handout that reviews at a high level some standard best practices with regards to email, both in terms of copywriting as well as email builds. Included in here are also things related to how to make your emails accessible for people who use screen readers and things of that nature. There's also an example end of year campaign plan for you to reference. This is a campaign plan that we had built for a former client so that you have an example to go from. There's also an additional example of a spring fundraising campaign plan. And I've also provided you with a project timeline template in Excel in case you find that useful. Again, these are things you can use. You're not obligated to use them. And then there's also a template content planner and calendar that you can use if you would like. Any questions about any of this so far? Okay. So what we are going to be going into today is building out your campaign plan for Colorado Gives Day, and also this should be applicable to any kind of campaign planning you do. These are really this is meant to be really foundational. All right, I think I've reviewed all of this already, but just to reiterate, the campaign plan is due on the 12th of September. Submit that through Google Drive. All right, so today we're going to be covering several different topics related to campaign planning. First up, we'll be using your strategic plan to guide campaign planning. So how the work that you've already done in this class builds up to actually being applicable to when you get to the point where you're actually planning a campaign. We'll workshop some campaign plans and goals. We'll look at an example campaign plan and talk about that in class. We will also go through the key components of a campaign plan, and then you'll have some time in class to start drafting your campaign plan outline. So to start off, what I really want to do first is walk through the template for the campaign plan outline so that you can see what that looks like, and I can answer any questions that you have about this. And again, this is just meant to be a guide. It is not something that you have to follow exactly. Okay, so, and also I made a few changes from the one that you would have gotten for your strategic plan based on feedback from y'all. So I'm hoping that this is even more helpful to you. There's additional descriptors under each of the main sections to give you some sense of what you might want to put there and some thoughts around planning for Colorado Gives Day. Okay, so first off, for a campaign plan, you're going to want to have an overview that sort of summarizes what the campaign is about and what you're doing. You're going to want to make sure that you have your campaign goal outlined. That may look like, I want to raise this much money, or I want this many new donors in the door during my end of year fundraising cycle. You're also going to want to outline your main message and your tagline if you have one here, so it's easy to refer back to. And you will want to outline who your target audience is, as well as anybody that you want to suppress. So this is like where you start figuring out your segmentation, right? So segmentation for Colorado Gives Day might look like current donors, lapsed donors, recurring donors, high dollar donors, low dollar donors, non-donors, however you want to slice and dice your donors, lay that out here and think about how you want to do that. And the purpose of this then, of course, is to be able to then be thoughtful in who you send email messages to and the frequency. So for, let's say, high dollar donors, you may only want to email them once or twice for the duration of the campaign and be much more targeted, right? Same for recurring donors, you may want to hit them up in a different way, right? You may want to ask a recurring donor to increase their monthly giving. That's a specific ask. So you may want to be creating a message that's particular to that, or a message that's an alternate version of the main donor message that you're sharing. All right. Next, if you have partners for your campaign, this is where you'd want to include them along with any details about how your partnership works. Campaign details would go here. That's things like hashtags being used, link to the donation page, any key dates, links to your creative assets, links to your copy, things of that nature. I built this out to be kind of like a toolkit because I've always found that to be helpful, especially if I'm working with multiple people on a campaign, because then you can share one document that really encapsulates all of the critical information for a campaign. And it just makes planning a little bit smoother, especially if you've got multiple stakeholders. Okay, next you will want to have your campaign timeline outline. You may want to include this here, or you may want to build out an Excel spreadsheet, or you may use a Gantt chart. You may have project management software that you use that you would plan this out in. Doesn't really matter how you do it, but having a timeline is really going to be helpful to making sure that your campaign is executed in a smooth fashion, and that you don't forget anything that needs to be done. I suggest at minimum including in your timeline the messages that you're going to be sending, who those messages are going to send to, what the send date and cadence is going to look like, and then what the channel is. So the channel would be like email or social media or text messaging, etc. Or direct mail if you're building out an omni-channel campaign and you want to include both the digital and traditional print methods. And then finally, you can include your message copy in this campaign plan as well, or you can develop that in a separate document, whatever works the best for you. But this is the template that is included in Google Drive for you to reference and work from. Any questions, thoughts on this?
So Elsa, I'm assuming we utilize the information that we put in our strategic plan and go ahead and carry it over into here, right? So there'll be some redundancy.
There would be some redundancy, but not a ton, not probably a ton, because the strategic plan you've been working on is really meant to inform the planning, these types of campaign plans. So you would reference it for, say, like, who's your target audience, but when it comes to the segmentation is going to be unique to your campaign.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll actually, that's a great question, because that's actually what I wanted to start talking about next, is how your fundraising plan is connected to your campaign plan. And when I say that it guides your overall approach, what I mean by that is your strategic plan that you've been working on is where you have your broader kind of information and planning located, like who your main audiences are, what your goals for the year are going to be, that kind of information. And then you also should have in there what your key activities for the year are. And so one of your key activities would be this campaign, right? And so that you know for planning what campaigns are coming up and what you need to start like getting into the nitty gritty for. So the strategic plan is a way of organizing your year, essentially, so that you know, here's the critical activities and things that I need to do. That may be campaigns, that may be developing a welcome series, whatever it is that you have decided that you need to do that's in your strategic plan, that should guide the work that you do for the rest of the year. And it also helps you to guard against adding on a lot of things at the last minute and trying to do too much, right? So part of planning in advance is so that then you're not scrambling later on in the year trying to fit too much into your calendar, or having not, remembered that you needed to plan for something. And of course, shit happens. There's probably always going to be a few last minute things that have to be done. And that's, and that's fine. You can always amend your plan. Plans should be living documents, I think, not something that's static. So that's really the way that I would advise you approaching the way that you think about your strategic plan and how it informs the rest of the work that you're doing throughout the year. Does that make sense to folks? Do you have questions about that? Do you have a different viewpoint? All right. Hearing silence, I will continue. Let me just make sure I've covered everything I wanted to for this section. Oh, yes. I did want to check in with y'all, especially since you're a little quiet this morning, about how you are already seeing this unfold for yourself. So you've been working on your strategic plan, right? How have you been able to put into practice any of the things that you started to outline in your strategic plan yet? Or are you still in kind of planning mode?
I guess I have a question.
Yeah.
After our last meeting, the folks in the group, our breakout session, it kind of felt like we were all from various size of organizations, with various resources at our fingertips. So some of us already had 2023 plans set and ready to go. Some of us did not. And so as we talk about this with you, and I guess this is just a very broad question, should we, if we already have that plan ready to go, should we use this opportunity as a chance to look at it again and see where improvements can be made? Or should we try and shape it for 2024?
That's a great question. And honestly, Mo, I would say it depends on what's going to be useful to you, right? If you feel like your plan is already in a good place, you don't really need to make any adjustments, then by all means start developing your 2024 plan. There's no reason not to do that. But if you want to take another closer look at your current plan and make some adjustments and refinements and think about using that then as a template for your planning for 2023, then that may be, that may be the right approach for you. And I also know it's mid-year, so a lot of you are already looking towards 2024 because you have already mapped out this year. So I think it really depends on what's going to be most useful for you.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, and I see a lot of you in the comments are still saying that you're still in planning mode. And that totally makes sense. All right. Anybody else want to share before I continue on? All right.
I'm still in planning mode, but it's been quite good. At the beginning, I was like a little confused with different stuff, but having access to all the material and the templates you share and the videos, it's been quite helpful. A lot of this stuff still feels very new for me, but I'm excited to put it into action. So
cool. That's great to hear, Javier. And if you have, additional questions or you want to workshop stuff with me, please join my office hours or set up a one-on-one with me. I'm always happy to go more in depth. I think for those of you who have joined office hours, it's been, I think, a good experience, and it's a good time to just sit down and review what you're working on and ask me questions and just have more focused attention, right? Versus in class where I'm addressing all of you at once.
yeah, I would love doing that. Actually, well, we can talk about that in there, but something that I really like is like the idea of like utilizing new media for the campaigns, right? I've been applying a little bit of what we're talking about in a project here in Costa Rica, like just testing how it works with YouTube and doing information with YouTube, showing like how is the process we have been doing. And you can see how like your audience kind of commit deeper when you have like that one-on-one like conversation with them, when they respond to your videos and stuff. So all of that is super good, like to keep your audience like moving and in a live conversation is super helpful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Jordan and I would both be curious to hear more about that as you keep working with those new media channels. So, and it can be challenging to explore those types of channels when you have limited resources. So it's exciting.
Exactly. Like I was just going to say, I think that's so exciting to be producing new content in a new channel, but sometimes it's hard to set yourself up for success to see, okay, where is there just organic engagement and where are those, converting to folks that want to be volunteers, want to donate, want to fundraise on your behalf. So I would say if you guys are exploring or thinking about new content, new media, new direction for your campaigns, and you don't have the time, but you have the idea, that's a good place to use Catchafire. So, leverage experts that can create images, can create videos, can help you streamline your YouTube channel or your social media. So just wanted to give them a shout out because, yeah, let's be realistic about this. We all have normal jobs on top of all this. So hopefully that Catchafire can catch, not to put a pun in there, to catch all that extra stuff that you're thinking about, but maybe can't quite execute.
Yeah. No, that sounds like a great idea. I've been exploring like, doing some video editing and, footage and stuff. And I'm just learning that I really like that, so it's actually pretty cool to have now the language to understand what actually you're putting out there and how like that can be translated into, numbers that are good for your project and stuff. So yeah, That's
Awesome.
pretty cool.
Well, and I'll just mention that, you know, it's very easy. It's a copy paste of a YouTube link to put that on your Colorado Gives page or in that content. And of course, using it in your marketing and outreach and other engagement channels is amazing as well. I've also been hearing a lot lately just in gearing up for Colorado Gives Day. I think a lot of folks are missing an opportunity in September and October to start inviting people to the idea of giving online. And so if you have planned events, if you have things that are already going on, I don't think you have to reinvent the wheel, but starting to introduce folks to giving to you online creates an easier, for example, upgrade to a monthly donor for Colorado Gives Day, for example. So just wanted to mention that. I'm hearing that a lot from nonprofits. So just something to noodle on as you're thinking about your activities this fall and winter.
All right. Thanks, Jordan. And thanks, Javier. I love hearing the details of what y'all are working on and what it looks like behind the scenes. It's really cool. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to actually look at, okay, we're going to look at an example campaign, and then we're going to discuss it together and see what we think about it and use that as sort of a springboard for your breakout session where you're going to talk about your own campaign plans and ideas for them. So before we get into it though, what I want you to keep in mind are some of these questions, like what's the goal of this campaign? What's the main message? What techniques stand out to you? What do you think is persuasive about this campaign? What works well about it? What do you think doesn't work well? What doesn't resonate? What would you improve? And anything else that kind of comes to mind, but these are some of the questions that I would like you to think about as we look at this example campaign. Okay.
Also, what do you mean by techniques? Are you talking about languaging, media?
All of the above, any kind of the way that the way that like the language is used, the different channels that are used, like this particular campaign uses a variety of different channels to communicate with people. They use different tactics when it comes to the types of messages that they're sharing. All of that is what I mean when I say techniques.
Thank
you. Mm-hmm. All right, so I picked this example because I follow Bitter Southerner on Instagram and I really like their content. And it's always good to use an example that you're passionate about, I think. And earlier this year, they were running their yearly membership campaign, and I was really impressed with the way that they ran the campaign and the content that they developed. And full disclosure, I did not become a member, but I'm planning to become a member next year. It's like on my to-do list. So they really did get me, but they're going to have to play the long game to like fully get me, which I think mirrors the way that a lot of the folks that you're trying to reach and convert to donors are, right? It takes a lot of touches to reach them. So let's go ahead and get into this campaign. All right, so this campaign ran for a couple weeks and they used a lot of different channels to reach people. I initially followed them on Instagram, but then also signed up for their emails. And when I signed up for that, they also got my cell phone number. So I also received a few texts from them as well. And you'll notice this is an email that they sent out. There's two options, monthly payment, one-time payment, and then they have join or renew. And you can see it's very straightforward. There's not a lot of additional text or anything else at the very beginning of this campaign. And then there's images of their magazine and of some of their merchandise. And of course, I understand not everybody's going to have merchandise, but you want to highlight what is your strong suit, right, in a campaign. So think about how you can apply the principles of what you're seeing here to your own work. All right, so this is a screenshot of one of the emails that I got. I'm going to show you like different parts of the email. So this is the header. And again, you'll see it's very straightforward, right to the point. Donate, right? Give us money. And then they get into a story about, this is sort of the, the hook, the main message of the email. And it's about Big Frida, right? Because Bitter Southerner is a magazine about Southern culture and storytelling and literature and music. And so what they did was they repurposed one of their existing stories about Big Frida for this particular email for this campaign. And they don't include the entire thing, right? They have a read on button that would then link out to reading the story that they're sharing here. And then at the end of the email, they have this what I would call like the main message. Read this and more amazing stories in issue number 5 of the Bitter Southerner magazine, available when you join at the $50 annual level or the $5 monthly level or above. So this is a very straightforward, to the point pitch. They've shown you the value up here of what you can get, right? These types of stories. And then they drill right into, here's what we want you to do. Here's how you can support us. Here's how you can be involved. And then again, they have that closing banner of, you can click to make a monthly payment or click to make a one-time payment. So it's very, they show you a compelling example of why you would want to give money to them. Then they give you like the one sentence pitch. And then there's the direct, multiple links you'll notice for how to actually donate. And this isn't the only channel that they rolled out this membership campaign on. They're also had a texting campaign. So I received 2 texts from this campaign, and no more than that, right? I'm a non-donor. And so part of running a successful campaign, as you all know, is about how many times you contact someone and making sure that you don't oversaturate them. And so while I received, I think 3 emails, I only received 2 text messages, because text messaging is a more sensitive platform, right? And if you text people too much, they're gonna unsubscribe and they're gonna become annoyed. And also you'll notice like the image here is of someone actually, looking at their product. They're reading the magazine. They're wearing the merchandise. And then the pitch is very short, simple, straight to the point. The BS. We're down to the wire and we need you. Become a member and let's keep working on a better South and a better world. So they've worked in basically their mission statement and why they want you to become a member. And then finally, here are some screenshots of their Instagram posts that they put out while this campaign was going on. And another thing I think that's important to notice here is how image driven this is. And of course it's Instagram, but all social media for the most part is increasingly image driven and video driven. And you'll note that there's not a lot of text, right? For the food stories, it's just an image of the book. For the middle post, you're just seeing their what their product is. And then for the last day join now, that's all, there's very little text on here. The bulk of the text is in the caption. And that is really, especially these days, best practice is to have minimal text on an image and to keep most of the text in the body of a given post. And there's also a variety of content in terms of this to draw you in, right? It's not just the first message isn't necessarily donate or give us money. It's a pitch about who they are. And then, further down, they might have information about how to become a member. And this middle post is just a straight up thank you for those who have become a member. And then this is, of course, the image on the far left is really pushing that, like, okay, this is it. If you want to become a member, do it now.
So do they give stickers and all of those materials to people who become their members, right?
They do, yes. And I know that not going to be the reality for a lot of you. You're not going to have swag or, you know, or something like that for membership. So you may need to rely on other types of tactics like impact of your programs or images of the work you do in action. So there's other ways that you can creatively illustrate the work that you're doing that doesn't have to be an exact replica of this campaign. I just really thought that they did a good job in this campaign of showing versus telling people what, you know, what to do, and really demonstrating the value of what they have to offer.
Yeah, no, I also think that it's really cool that they also send them something, because as a donor, if you receive something that actually keeps, I don't know, it keeps it in your mind more often than if you don't receive things, right? Because you get the stickers and all the stuff, which can be like a reminder, and you also feel like, you know, maybe more connected with them. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
that's me.
I think, I mean, personally, I find that to be true, and I appreciate little things. Like I'm part of, I'm a member of the land trust here locally. They do land conservation work, and they went for members, new members, they send like a nice magnet that says like the North Alabama Land Trust, and you can either put it in your fridge or you could put it on your car, whatever. And it is nice to have that memento. One, it visibly shows other people that this is an organization that you care about and support. And two, it does keep top of mind, like that this is an organization that I love and care about and support. So I do think that there's value in having little things, little mementos like that. And of course, if you are the type of organization that can support a shop, or can like do t-shirts or, or whatever, something that's like unique and compelling, that, that can be useful. I do think that not doing swag willy-nilly is important. Like if you're going to create something like that, it costs money, right? Make sure that you're doing something that is not going to go straight into the trash can.
And I'll just mention too, I work with and donate to a lot of smaller organizations that, you're right, Elsa, if they're doing a swag, it's like a big chunk of their money, and they are focusing on it, and it's a very, specific campaign, for example, to allow people to upgrade to become members, just like this. But I would say I feel in some ways just as special when I donate and someone is just following up with an impact story. Hey, your $100 just helped so-and-so with our mission, so I think the follow-up can be just as valuable as something physical. And also, like, if you're on Instagram and I am engaging with your content and you like me back, or you send me a message. Now, again, I know not everybody can do that. You can't send every person a message, but if there's other ways of engagement outside of something physical that you can be creative and make people feel good, those are options as well, I think.
That's such a good point, Jordan. And I really completely agree. And I think one of the most important things, if you're going to be active on social media, and I advise people on this all the time, is what's really matters for social media is the level and depth of engagement. And so if you can concentrate your efforts more on one platform and really engage with the people who comment and respond to them and make them feel like they matter, that's going to be a much big value driver than blasting pre-made like toolkit type content across all your channels just so that you have something there. That like deeper level of engagement where you're really talking to that other person is much more impactful. So what are some other thoughts that folks have thinking back about these questions? Let me go back to the questions. Thinking about these questions, what are some other thoughts that y'all have about this particular campaign that come to mind?
I wanted to point out Susan's message. She had said that text sometimes in images doesn't translate, especially if you're serving, for example, multiple audiences or people speaking multiple languages, I should say. What is there any like solve for that, or is it just, hey, we have to make double the what does that look like?
Yeah. So one, thank you, Susan, for pointing that out. That's really true. And there's also another aspect of this, which is that if you have someone who's using assistive technologies, they can't read the text on an image. So if you do have text on an image and you want that to be accessible because it's important information that's not included elsewhere, then you want to have alt text on your images. However, platforms like Instagram don't actually have alt text capabilities enabled. So that's why it's even more important to make sure that you have a well-written caption that includes all of the pertinent content in the caption. And the same is true really for email, even though you do have alt text capabilities on email. When it comes to multiple languages, it really depends on your audience size. I've worked for organizations where we did create 3 different versions of content for things that were, you know, important. Like if we were writing email messages or what have you, we had Spanish, Creole, and English that went out separately to folks based on their the language that was their primary language. For social media, that gets a little trickier. And I think it really depends. You have to weigh and figure out like, all right, of my audience, do I have a significant contingent of folks who are Spanish speakers or, you know, whatever the language may be? If so, then yeah, you may want to be writing all of your captions in English and Spanish. Now, if you don't have someone on staff who's fluent in both languages, that's not going to be practical to do. You're only going to probably be able to afford a translator for big campaigns. You know, there's just some like hard limitations sometimes on that. But if you have a significant contingent of folks who are in your audience, then yes, I think that it is really important to make sure that you are doing multilingual content across the board, because otherwise those folks become an afterthought. And that's not the message that you want to send, I think, as an organization.
Can I throw out one other thing, Elsa? We know that a lot of our patients who are monolingual Spanish speakers or Afghanis have their devices set up in the language of their preference. So as long as we don't have static images with words, they can generally get the information that they need.
Yeah, that's true. I will say that those translations are, you know, not perfect. So when you have the resources and capability to actually do full translations or write natively in that language, that's definitely more desirable, because there's just nuances that an auto translation type service just doesn't provide. But yes, it's that is a great thing that folks can have, so that you can still get information. But if you can translate, I would say spend the money to translate.
Yeah, and I'll just mention that on coloradogives.org, there is a translate option. So for folks that do need to translate, whether it's on the universal site or specifically on your page, that is an option for them. And it's good. Is it 100%? Like Elsa said, no, but it gets folks what they need so that they can navigate the site and give back to you guys. Yeah. And we continue to invest in those types of improvements.
And I think in the nonprofit world too, we can't let perfection be our enemy, right? It's better to do the best that we can, and you're not going to be able to do everything or reach everybody. I think what's important is having those kinds of questions and considerations in mind, so that when you do have the opportunity to expand access, you're proactive about doing that. All right, there are a couple questions in the comments that I want to go ahead and address. One is recommendations on texting platforms. Off the top of my head, I don't, but I actually just got back from Bridge, which is one of the big nonprofit conferences out in DC. And there were a ton of SMS specific, like fundraising type platforms that were at that conference. And I have a lot of their contact information that I'm still kind of going through. So once I've rounded that up, I will share that with Jordan, and we can send out a few folks. I won't say that I'm like personally saying like these people are great, but there are a plethora of services. One that I was particularly impressed is called Tatango, and I just like them because they have integrations with common nonprofit fundraising platforms like Luminate and things like that, and so that makes that SMS platform capable of segmenting your audience, for you based on the segmentation in your in your main CRM it has other capabilities that I thought were good. But there's a lot of different services out there.
Yes,
and
so many. And if you're exploring text to give, your advanced features within Colorado Gives has a text to give feature. It's not going to be the expansive, expensive wow text to give that you might leverage later. But it gives you the ability to test and see if it's something that you'd want to explore. And then those advanced features also integrate, as Elsa said, with other platforms through Zapier, like a text to give platform. So just throwing that out there as you guys are thinking through how the data's flowing and where you're making your asks.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. There's a few other things. All right. Feedback that they don't want their donation coming back in the form of stuff or a number of additional mailings or contacts. Susan, this is your comment. Do you mean people don't like when other organizations rent out their information or participate in list buying?
No, just they don't want if they give you $100, they don't want, $10 of it coming back to them in the form of a trinket. They want $100 of their donation going toward mission and what we do. And same with mailings, which I know are not as common now, not what we're talking about, but they're certainly a lot more expensive than, say, a digital outreach.
Sure. Okay, I see. So people are fiscally sensitive. They want to make sure that their money is being well spent. Gotcha. That makes sense. All right. And then Juliana, you had a question about following people back who follow you. That's a really good question because it can get out of hand really fast. And my advice would generally be actually not to follow people who follow you just by default, because what you'll quickly will happen is you'll have lots and lots and lots of people that you're following and it becomes like really unmanageable. And like ultimately you want to be able to see in your feed things that are pertinent to your organization. So I actually recommend that for the most part, you follow other organizations and key people and key figures in your community or in the movement or like wherever you are, but not to just generally follow your constituents. There's also something that I think probably matters less now, but still is kind of a thing, which is sort of like the follower to following ratio. And typically, the larger and more established an organization is, they're not going to follow a lot of people, but they're going to have a lot of followers. So you typically want a ratio of following fewer people, but having lots of people follow you. Thanks. Sure. All right. And I see that Athena's also shared a dislike for swag because it makes you wonder about where your money is going. That's a really good point that I guess I hadn't thought about that much, but I have gotten like swag where I'm like, this is not a good use of resources. So I guess the lesson here is be judicious, right? If you are going to send your followers something, be thoughtful about it and know that it's not necessarily going to resonate with everybody. All right. Any other thoughts to share about this campaign or campaign planning generally, or questions before we move on? All right. So next thing we're going to do is some small group workshopping. I will, just like usual, I'll break y'all out into different rooms. And what I would like you to do is think about concepts you can use for your upcoming Colorado Gives Day campaign. So basically, this is a chance for you to ideate and toss ideas around with other folks in the cohort. You'll have about 15 minutes to talk, and then I'll start pulling people back. And then everyone will have a chance to share. So someone from your group should be ready to share back what you've learned and what you talked about, just like last class. Okay, let's see if I can actually remember how to split y'all up. There's way too many Settings. All right, breakout rooms. Here we go. And Jordan, I know you had asked me not to assign you if possible, but there's not really an easy way for me to not assign you. So you can just not go into the breakout room, I think, or exit it. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I didn't realize that about the breakout rooms.
I think there's a way to do it if I was to manually assign them, but not when I automatically do so. All
Gotcha.
right. Tessa and Tiffany, it looks like you both still need to join the group that you were, the room that you were invited to. Aaron, same. Let's see, Aaron, you should see an invitation to join room 6. So if you're, let me know if you're still not able to join that, and I can assign you to another room. Aaron, are you there? Oh, now I see 2 of you. All right, I tried moving you to another room, Aaron. But I'm seeing that you're still not joined.
Yeah, that list of, I mean, that name doesn't ring a bell for me.
Okay.
Maybe Boson. Let me ask Jessica, just because she has stared at all the lists a lot longer than me, to see if,
Yeah. I
yeah,
did.
one sec.
um,
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I looked at like, cause Jess had sent me a list of like all the organizations and like all the cohorts at one point. And I did oh, never mind. I did a search, but it didn't like search correctly. So that would be why I just see her in here now.
Oh, you do, okay.
Yeah. She's with Cobbled Streets.
Okay. There must have been another contact, because I feel like early on I had contacted someone else. So maybe they swapped.
Maybe so. Let me see who's in the main. Who's supposed to be the main list. Streets. Let's see. I have a Shink down and that no one has ever attended until this
Okay.
call.
So we did send out emails being like, hey, attend in person. I mean, in the nicest way possible, but so I didn't even look. What is participation today? About the same, about 35?
31 actually.
Okay.
Total. So 30, I guess, not counting you.
Okay.
And I think I'm gonna go ahead and bring people back, I think.
Okay.
So we should start joining in a few seconds. Everybody come back? Looks like it. All right, great. So let's go ahead and share what y'all were discussing in your breakout rooms. So who would like to go first?
I'll go first just to get it over with.
Okay.
So I was in breakout room 3 and we were just kind of talking about what kind of campaigns we could be doing. Some of us are more looking overall for money, and some of us are looking for campaigns for certain projects we're working on. So we talked about doing Mighty Cause campaigns, word of thanks. A couple of the people in our group were on word of thanks with 9 News, so we were figuring out ways that we could all have that all worked, and then just trying to kind of figure out now is the time to start thinking about it. It was kind of harder with us mostly thinking about these things in like October later on in this year for our campaigns. It's kind of a how do we start now in August thinking about these things?
Sure. Yeah. I know it can be hard to think that far down the road, but I find that planning that far in advance can be really helpful though. Let's see, Heather, you have your hand raised. Did you want to go next?
Oh, sure. Okay, so we actually all talked about like kind of themes we were thinking about, or concepts or campaign ideas, and we actually all were kind of in the process of celebrating our either 10 or 15-year anniversaries and talking about what kind of content should we highlight, whether it's you know, things that have happened over time. One of our folks does like building restoration, and so, you know, showing how the buildings have weathered over time and that kind of stuff. One of our other people does horse and people like kid work. I think it's kids. I apologize if I'm butchering this. And they were talking about doing like, they usually highlight the person or the horse separately and putting them together as a team. And then it might be cool to kind of use those as, you know, which team can raise the most money type situation. The last thing I thought that was super interesting is we also talked about the use of AI just to generate ideas for our campaigns when we're stuck. I personally have never done it, but our other two folks had, and had kind of interesting feedback on it, just to like kind of help you get over that hurdle or come up with verbiage or something like that, which I thought was interesting. That's it.
Cool. I am so interested to hear more about AI, because I think it's just going to become something that we're all going to use at some point, whether we want to or not. Abby, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, very similar. My group talked about a bunch of different ideas. We also are kind of all at anniversary points, just so how to tie that in and really, you know, bump it up. Impact stories, client stories. We also talked about, my organization had the most success last year from phoning people through Colorado Gives to get donations. So thinking about like maybe a phone campaign and how to spice that up, and also following it up with thank you calls. One of our people is doing a contest where they're having people vote, and so curious maybe how to tie that into Colorado Gives. And yeah, and then somebody else was talking about setting up an event where they could do some really conscious filming and get testimonials and have materials for the content.
Okay, great. Yeah, those all sound like really promising ideas. All right, I'm just going to go down the line here because a lot of y'all have raised your hands. Nicole.
All right. Well, we talked, we were a little bit reflective on how last year went and looking at some of those strategies. And then we kind of talked about what we might do differently or better this year. And some of the major ideas were utilizing, you know, video as a possible way to really tell stories of impact. And then for our organization who's coming up on their 40-year anniversary, also thinking about maybe really focused on an endowed fund or some kind of capital campaign with a very specific goal. We talked about, let's see, what are the things? Just really, I think storytelling became a big part of our focus, is how do we tell these stories with limited resources, and making sure that the stories also are inspiring and not, in some instances, not, distracting. And so thinking of that kind of messaging is really what we're talking about.
All right, thank you for sharing. Yeah, those are all really important questions to consider. All right, Jessica.
I'm Jessica. I'm with the Denver Urban Debate League, and I've missed the last couple sessions. So I just wanted to say hi, and it's great to see everybody today. So I was in a group with some folks from Girls with Books, Pepper's Senior Dog Sanctuary, Work Options, and the Colorado Alliance for something that I related to environmental policy. I hope I got that kind of right. But we talked a lot about the Colorado Gives Day campaign and how that fits in with our broader campaigns throughout the year in terms of distinguishing messaging. One thing that we touched on was Colorado Gives Day being a smaller part of an end of year giving campaign. And some people expressed, how important it is to make sure that it's not just Colorado Gives Day, but you're kind of starting with, the whole kind of giving season. And then we talked about ways to kind of craft that messaging and inspire that messaging so it might stand out from other campaigns, and how the most important thing when you're looking at a campaign is really to think about the story you're telling and also a goal. And so maybe just making sure that your story for Colorado Gives Day is a new story, and that you have a very specific goal. And then we also talked about just being, if you're a smaller organization, how much work it takes to get to all of these great ideas, using peer-to-peer fundraising to really expand networks and get the message out. And then we also had a conversation about using ChatGPT, and some people in the group have had a really great experience using that to kind of boost capacity. And so that was an interesting conversation as well.
Great, thank you. All right, Gracie, pardon me.
Yeah, so we talked about all having primarily used email and social media in the past to fundraise during Colorado Gives, and we all were really excited at the opportunity to use text to give. It's something none of us had used before. And then very similar to Jessica, we just talked about how that's a really busy fundraising time. There's Giving Tuesday and then end of year campaigns. And so all just wanting Colorado Gives Day to feel unique and not be kind of the same messages that we are using at that time of year. And so one member of our group talked about her organization has had a lot of success on focusing Colorado Gives Day more on the donor. Because you gave this much money last year, we were able to accomplish this. And so that was really interesting to hear how much success they'd had with that. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. This is all really interesting information that you're sharing. And I love seeing some of the overlap as well as some of the different things that, that y'all talked about, but clearly I feel like there's some themes emerging in here. One, kind of surprising to me is the AI stuff. I didn't expect so many people to be trying out that ChatGPT and stuff already. It's really cool to hear. Capacity issues. Sounds like a lot of people are facing those. And a lot of you are also exploring different channels to use, phone, text, all of that. So that's really cool and exciting to me, because I think those are really important channels to use. Email, of course, is always going to be, I think, important, just like direct mail, I think will always have a place, but exploring other channels and other ways to reach people, I think is really critical for meeting the goals that you all have. And if you have the capacity to do that, it's a good thing to invest in, I think. All right. Does anyone else want to share before we go ahead and move on?
I have a related question.
Sure.
I'm thinking about audience, and I know about my audience, but with Colorado Gives, I'm curious about the audience of people who are participating in Colorado Gives Day that might not know my organization already, and what I can do in planning my campaign to help attract their attention and their dollars. So I'm curious also if Jordan might have some perspective on that, kind of that pool of donors that's a Colorado Gives Day donor that's maybe not necessarily familiar with my organization yet.
That's such a great question. I'll keep it brief, but I will encourage everybody, if you haven't yet, to be registering for the webinars that are upcoming, building up to Colorado Gives Day, because I'm going to be covering a lot of this, and we'll have two specifically on our marketing campaign, what we saw last year, who we brought in, kind of how they're navigating the site. And so that should give you some insight. But I think the basics are making sure your page is really tight, up to date, concise, so that people who are engaging with you on desktop or on mobile can, in a couple sentences, say, oh, okay, I know what this organization does. I know what their value proposition is. I know I want to give to them. So just really tightening up your page is going to be great. And then the other thing I would encourage you to do is reaching out to our marketing team, because specifically with this cohort of Level Up folks, we want to be highlighting you. So I think there's just more opportunity than there was in years past to have your organization highlighted through our statewide campaign. And then lastly, we saw our campaign last year was Give a Buck. This year we are changing it up, but we did see success last year. So we saw, and our intention was to engage and drive new, of course, but potentially younger donor audience. And we did see that happen through our campaign. This year, we're retargeting a bit. We are focusing on retention. We are focusing on major donors, recurring donors. And so in the webinar happening in September, we'll talk in great detail about our statewide campaign and give you some insights into how you can kind of leverage that messaging and leverage what we're doing to attract new folks.
Thanks so much. That's really helpful.
Oh, thanks for asking that question. All right, anything else before we move on? Okay, so the next thing, is to kind of reiterate a few things about your campaign plan, and then to give you about 20 minutes to work on your campaign in small groups. You can work, kind of separately. You can not talk. You can talk while you start thinking about how you want to, get your outline underway. And then we'll come back together and go through like final reminders and go ahead and wrap up. Okay, so the things that I think are really important to keep in mind when you are working on your campaign plan is, like so many of you have already said, what is your goal, right? You want to have a very tight, focused goal that is achievable and also understandable to all of the stakeholders involved in the campaign. Then you want to make sure you have a solid main message and call to action. And I see main message, top line message, people call it different things, but it's like, what's kind of like the core thrust of the campaign? What are you really wanting to tell people? And then your call to action is going to for the most part, is going to be donate, become a monthly donor. It may look a little bit different depending on which audience that you're reaching out to. And that really brings us to the audience section of a campaign, which I think is so critical. And I know that all of you are, aware and already thinking about how to segment your campaigns. And I just want to emphasize how important it is to really think about that and not just blast everybody with the same message and the same amount of time and the same number of messages. Because, for example, if you're dealing with someone who is not a donor or a lapsed donor, it's going to be important to touch them a couple times, but not over and over and over again, because you don't want to, again, oversaturate someone who is less likely to, to engage. And if you try and engage them too aggressively, what will sometimes end up happening is they'll unsubscribe completely, or they're completely disengaged from the organization. It's much better to have a few touches to remind them that you exist and that, that you're part of their orbit, than to just hammer them every single day with a message. Let's see. Next is identifying the key platforms or channels that you're going to be on. So figuring out, all right, I'm going to have content for email. I'm going to have content for social. I'm going to have content for text, or I'm going to, have a phone banking, plan. And then you can make sure that your messages are crafted to suit those different platforms, because you're not going to have the exact same message or approach for an email that you would for a phone conversation or for social media. And then with social media, I would drill down further and decide which platforms are important to you, because just because you're on lots of platforms doesn't mean that you may necessarily want to have the same content or even like focus as much. Maybe you know that Facebook is where you have seen more folks engage and want to be part and want to donate, right? So then maybe you spend more time on that platform. Basically, this goes back to a key point that I think I've been reiterating since day one, and that I know you all are very aware of, is to be judicious with your time and your resources, because both are limited and you want to make the most of what you've got without completely burning out and, wanting to quit your job on December 31st. Let's see. Finally, timeline and cadence for the campaign. I think this is so critical, actually mapping out your timeline of not just, I'm going to send this message on this day, but also the timeline for the campaign plan, right? And that's a little bit different. That is going to be like your project plan essentially for your campaign. And I think I have resources for that for you. Let me see. Template content. Yeah, here we go. Timeline. This is a very, very simple timeline that is like, here's the main project area or milestone. Here's the task I need to do. Here's when it's due. Here's when I should start it. This may seem like overkill, but I promise you, it will make your life so much easier if you figure out all of the key tasks that you need to do in advance and when they need to be done. I typically like to work backwards. This classic project planning technique where you think, okay, this is the day the campaign starts. What do I need to have done by the time the campaign starts? It's like, well, I need to have all my copy ready. I need to have my emails built. Okay, well, what does that, when does the copy need to be written so that it can be reviewed and approved? So then you're starting to think like, oh, okay, so 3 weeks before this campaign, I need to have my copy drafted so that it can get reviewed and approved, and the emails can be built and all of the other like assets created and things like that. So it's really helpful to actually plan out your timeline, because then you don't end up as frequently with this crunch at the end where you have like all of these little things that you forgot that you needed to do because you've taken the time to sit down and go from the end and build backwards. Does that make sense to folks? Does anybody have questions about that, or thoughts if you've done this before for campaigns? No. Okay, cool. So those are my big things that I wanted to really emphasize about campaign planning. And then I'm going to go ahead and get him. Yeah. Planning. I know, how many times can I say it, right? I'm going to go ahead and give y'all about 20 minutes to just think about starting your own campaign plans for Colorado Gives Day, or for end of year giving, however you want to structure your campaign plan. All right, I'm going to go ahead and recreate the same rooms, and I see a few of you are going to need to leave. That's totally fine. There'll be a recording of this lesson uploaded later on by end of day into Google Drive for those of you who might have need to miss a little bit. But unless there's any questions, I'm going to go ahead and divide y'all into break rooms again. All right, Jordan, it's just you and me again.
Okay. What's
I can't believe this
how-
last class.
I know it went so fast,
It really-
and I think it went really, really well. So thank you for everything. I think I definitely learned a lot about how maybe we can prep them better. You know what I mean? To like
I
put all the
totally agree.
pieces together.
Yeah.
But I think the actual content and the course is and of course the materials that you're providing are really, really helpful. But yeah, I think I forget sometimes that like we talk the technology language all day, every day. And so maybe just putting those pieces together for them a little bit more. So when they join these classes, it flows a little bit more. I think that's something on us that we need to think about for next year. But
Yeah.
it seems like, and when I've talked one-on-one with folks, they are all like, this is amazing. It's forcing me to think about this. My executive director is so pumped, you know, so it's all been super positive.
That's great. I'm so pleased. I'm really happy. Especially just coming, you know, having worked in nonprofit for so many years, you know, I really sympathize and like appreciate how difficult it is to do this kind of planning when you're in when you're just in the thick of it and you've got so many competing priorities. But I really truly believe that when you do take the time to do this, it really does make the rest of your work flow better and it reduces your workload overall. But it's really hard to set aside the time.
Yes, it is. And I'm guilty of that too. I've got about half a campaign plan right now for, you know, my local community foundation. So I'm working towards that September 12th deadline as well. So yeah, I mean, I would love to debrief it sometime and also bring Erica back into the conversation and just talk through what we learned and what we can do better, because we're already getting interest to basically iterate on this. And so
great.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Yeah.
Well, I have Jessica booked you and me
she did.
a planning session for course 2 for a couple weeks from now, because I wanted to go ahead and like get started on that while it was fresh. And a big part of that for me is debriefing about this. And like, what did we learn? What do we want to change? I know I've got a lot of notes. I'm sure you have a lot of notes. And, you know, it's just made me rethink like what should be in the second curriculum, because I think going deeper on like some of these topics might be really helpful for folks, like some real like hands-on stuff, like how to plan and execute your welcome series, or I don't know, like things of that nature, where I'm like kind of seeing like, okay, it would be helpful to go in on some of the practicalities, I think, of how to execute on this stuff.
Yes. And I think there's something to these different types of organizations and like documenting somehow these challenges. So like in the last group session, I was in with a bunch of health organizations, and they truly felt like, well, HIPAA prevents us from doing fundraising. And like, I did a little bit of Googling after that conversation. I was like, well, no, that's actually not true. You know, there's certainly people who, you know, are health organizations leverage the data. They just have to do it in a certain way, you know, to be compliant with HIPAA. So just, I think, yeah, for me, it was like, how do we give these guys the confidence to say, yes, I can do that. Yes, that works for my organization, instead of, no, these are all of our challenges and I can't do that. So anyway, that was just, I don't know, that really caught my eye, just in regards to health organizations. So I wonder if like bubbling up those challenges and eliminating them in the second course might be fun, a fun exercise at the very least.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, Jordan. I like that a lot. I'm also like, when you say another iteration of this, like you're talking about kind of reworking this first course in a new way.
Well, actually, I mean, I'm certainly certainly adjustments I think we can make to make it easier for you to make it more like I don't know, for them to be able to move through some of it themselves. But What I actually meant was that we have other partners, other funders. So specifically, we're talking to RTL Foundation, which is a newer organization, but they're specifically and only focused on BIPOC led and serving. They have to be both BIPOC led and serving. So Black focused nonprofits. And they loved this idea. This is like what they want to bring to the table. But then there's questions that arise like, okay, you know, that community of nonprofits might have their own specific challenges. So are we moving them through and they're just engaging with the recording? Or is there, you know, are there changes that we have to make based on different funding partners? How much of that time is yours versus like, you know, so just like all the questions about the logistics. So we might be able to not suck up all your time, but also like bring value to different, you know, partners and cohorts. So that's the most recent one, but we have had some other folks kind of raise their hand and say, oh, this interests me. Yeah, but I think first we have to have that debrief to kind of figure out, you know, what went well, what didn't, what we might see in year two, and then, you know, how we might iterate on all of this without having it be a time suck every year, or if we're running multiple cohorts per year, you know, what does that look like? Anyway, so yeah, that's what I meant by that.
Okay. And I can see so many possibilities for different models, especially like reworking this material and presenting it in different ways. I love the idea of like a hybrid model. Like maybe I could do something like create mini lessons that are like pre-recorded, and then folks like,
oh, that's cool.
Come to, you know,
yeah.
come to like, maybe there's more frequent office hours or like a longer block, or you do like one-on-one time, or like, I don't know, there's so many different possibilities where you could create different cohort types based on people's needs.
And I think you nailed it on the head. I think mini lessons that folks are going through, and then having your time be spent in those office hours. It seems like that to me, if I was a small nonprofit, that would be the most valuable. Are you finding that it's the same people that show up, or is it a mix every week?
There's a couple people who almost always show up, but it is a mix. I think every office hour I've had someone come who hasn't come to an office hour before, or hasn't come, you know, every time. So there's like a couple people who generally show up for a little while to ask questions, but then there's always like a few other new people. And I would say every office hours that I've had, that's been at least 2 people have come to office hours.
Okay, cool. And something I really hadn't promoted up until this point is the one-on-ones. Mainly just because I thought it was like a lot to be like office hours, one-on-ones, Catchafire, you know, like everything.
People want to do the one-on-ones over the course of this fall.
Yes, exactly.
You know?
Okay, so I'll start inserting that more into future communications so they can start warming up to that idea as well.
Okay. And I know I had the idea that I was going to like, and I did set up like a link for people to like auto schedule, but if people don't want to do that and they want to email me for whatever reason to like back and forth plan out a time, that's okay too. You know, I'm flexible.
Gotcha. Okay, awesome. I'm going to step away for just 1 second.
Sure.
I'm back. Not that we have to chat through this whole thing.
Oh, I'm happy to chat. I already took attendance. I've got nothing else to.
It's been kind of a crazy, I mean, I feel like I'm saying that all the time. It's just a crazy time of year as we're trying to get everything out for Colorado Gives Day in advance. But is there anything for the upcoming webinar that you guys need? Or is that more Elizabeth that's doing, or I'm sorry, I'm getting them everybody mixed up. Allison.
Oh no, that's okay, Allie. I don't think I'm actually going to be taking over that from Allie. So I'm going to have a meeting with her this week to kind of review everything. And I had looked at like I've been also had eyes on like that, you know, all the webinars in that project too. So but I don't know offhand if there's anything else that we need right now. I don't think so. But I'll be doing a deeper dive into that this week to make sure.
Okay, great.
Did Elizabeth talk to you yet or not that Allie's Allie got another job, so she's actually leaving?
Oh, I see. Okay.
I'm so sad to lose her. She's just,
I know, she was nice. I mean, only worked with her that one time, but she was super and really responsive to basically my feedback that you hear all the time. Tie it back to Colorado Gives. I'm so sorry. But she did it so great. It was so that is sad that she's leaving, but she was great while I worked with her.
yeah. So I'll be taking up the mantle of the webinars for the next two, making sure that work gets over the finish line, and I'll lead webinar too.
Okay.
I'm actually really eager to see Colorado Gives Day happen because I think it'll just give me a much better frame of reference, and then I can start to use more Colorado Gives Day specific examples in the curriculum, which I know you really want to see, and I really want to be able to give to you at a different, at a higher level. And going through the campaign will really help me to do that. I think I'm probably going to like lurk on people's pages and take screenshots and if possible get feedback from folks on the campaign and like any final campaign plans they have and stuff like that we might be able to use in future classes.
Okay, great. Well, and also between Jess and I, we took a full screenshot of everybody's public organization page on Colorado Gives, more to measure what changes they might make related to copy and in the next, like the copywriting course, but really just as a measure overall to see what changes. So, I just wanted to mention before you bring everybody back in for the webinar, if you wanted to do any handouts, they're like really well received. And honestly, our webinar follow-up emails are the most engaged out of all emails we send. So just wanted to mention that because we have so many great resources here. If you can use any, great.
Oh, for sure. I'll take a look and see what we can reuse and share with folks. That makes a lot of sense. Hi, McLeana. Sorry.
Hi, Jordan. I wanted to ask, you mentioned about you can highlight someone's organization in, like newsletter or for the Colorado Gives?
Yes. So one thing that our team is really focusing on doing better in our statewide marketing plan and campaign is to be telling unique nonprofit stories. So whether that's the success that they had in 2022 or potentially for your organization, what you are planning to do and how you are going to raise funds or thinking about it for your organization in 2023. And so my ask would be to email us at, and I'll put it here in the chat again, it's just hello@Colorado Gives Foundation, the longest email ever. Hello@Colorado Gives Foundation. And that's going to go to our marketing team. And so if you can just introduce yourself, maybe share a little bit about.
Okay, here it is. Let me get this.
So just introduce yourself. Of course, you can mention, hey, Jordan told me to email you guys, just so as a reference point that you're in the Level Up program. And then our marketing team will work to respond with you and explore how we might highlight your organization.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Is it like first come, first serve thing?
I think, we're really at this point right now kind of looking to collect a good number of potential stories to have like a database of stories. And then we're going to find out where they fit. Do they fit in, for example, I'm running, all of our Colorado Gives Day webinar trainings. So can I insert your organization there as an example versus, of course, we're doing paid media, paid advertisement, interviews, highlighting videos. So there's just a lot of different channels. And so at this point, we're just trying to collect stories and see kind of where we might fit those pieces for the larger media campaign.
Okay. And this will be for the end of the year.
Well, Colorado Gives Day starts November 1st, but yes, so November 1st, and then it goes through December 5th is the big 24-hour day with all the exciting prizes.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll send an email.
Of course, yeah. And if you need any additional support or one-on-one, of course, Elsa has her office hours every Wednesday, and you can also schedule one-on-one with her. And then I'm going to just share my email with you. If I can support you or have a one-on-one call with you, I'd be happy to do it.
Okay, that would be good.
Yes, so that'll be probably a little bit closer to the end of August. What are we in? We're in week 2. So I'm targeting next week and we'll see how that goes, but it will be prior to you starting your copywriting course September 5th.
Okay, great. Thanks. I think those are all of the big reminders that I have. Also, I would love to hear any additional feedback that that any of y'all have, that if you want to email me or share during office hours, both like the positive and the negative, what do you think would work better next time, what you liked, what wasn't helpful, what you wish, you had seen, anything like that will help me to improve things and develop a stronger course for course 2 for y'all. Also, like topics of interest, things that you would really like to see covered in the second course, anything like that is really welcome. And I'd love to hear what you have to say.